detail of each image. And the second function is the Basilar function of and is the function of database. The story map allow all users using a touch screen to interact with the highlighted place in the we can have information and read their peculiarities. These tools could be used to present, collect data, or simply as a tools for researching with preparing to study a new city, a new culture, or simply a new street. Another important function is the dashboard. The dashboard is an important function in the story map. And this function, unfortunately, up into the mainstream since COVID-19 has many organization documents, in this case, positive test result using a dashboard. But in our case too, we utilize the dashboard for different purposes. In detail, in this project, I have geo-localized, geo-referenced 50,028 activity commercial, activity market, activity commercial, and the dashboard is very important because right you have a map which is referenced with 50,028 points. We can zoom. We can make a zoom, and you can see the number change. And in the left hand, in the corner, the type of activities, and the left hand corner, we have also the statistic. Why is very important the dashboard? The dashboard is very important for all the historians, in this case for the economical historians, who are interested in studying, for example, the economic situation in Marseille during the French Revolution. For example, if we are interested to the Tisser, we can touch the map sur la carte on the map. Sorry for English French, but all the can do this for activities, so we can study every aspect of the economic life in Marseille. The story map goes on. I give a very fast explanation. Here I have tried to rewrite one of the most important urban revolt, but I go on in this situation, and I arrive in another very important function, that is the database. This aspect was developed with the Musée d'Histoire de Marseille. It's a georeferential of the Fédéré Marseillaise, and this is a elementary function of the GIS. We have the punctual representation of each Fédéré. We can touch on every point, and we have a aspect of each soldier, the surname, the name, his job, his residence. The application was developed with a touch screen system, and now present in the museum of Marseille. So I thank you so much for the attention. I'm sorry for the French English, but in my head there's a little bit of confusion in this moment. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Angelo. No, I have to say it was clear. Thank you. Somehow we have some problems with the audio, possibly, but of course it is not your fault. If I'm not wrong, Christian Rocco is not present in person, but he sent a presentation which will be played by Professor Giannini, who will probably also introduce you to our new platform, the new platform of the PhD program of Teramo.
Yes, thank you, Luca. I don't know if you see
we can see the screen.
I am sharing the screen.
Yes, you're sharing it correctly.
It's okay. Well, because I don't see nothing, anything. Well, thank you. I would like to take this opportunity to show the first, very first draft of the new digital history portal we are setting up in Teramo. It is just the framework where the results of the digital researches of our PhD students will flow in open access. As you can see, it looks more than a gallery of activities for now, but it has been designed to be continuously enriched and to be open to topics such as tourism, education, gamification, etc., with the possibility of transversal research so as to constitute a bridge between the digital history and cultural heritage valorization and dissemination at different levels. Of course, this portal aims to promote the encounter between high-quality research experiences and the wider public through all digital tools. So I will show only an example very shortly. This is the cultural heritage section, where you can see the Acquaviva Virtual Museum, Franciscan Abruzzo, the project by Paola Tagliente, and so on. Every project will have its space and with the name of the PhD student and all the data available in open access. In the homepage, we just have the program of our workshop, today workshop, and as you can see, we have also the short video by Carmine and Christian Ruocco with his project, the Acquaviva Virtual Museum. That now I will put on for you. Please, Luca, let me know if you hear the.
At the moment, we don't. No, I don't think the video is running. No, we don't. We do not hear.
It is not running the video?
No, it is not. No, I'm sorry. We see the first page of the website.
Always the first page. Okay.
Yes, only the first.
Just a moment. I try to change.
No.
We are seeing again the website, the platform. No, I'm sorry, but there is the platform again, the website again.
Nothing. It's impossible. No, it's if I share the whole screen, it's the same. I think I can try.
It could be a good suggestion. I must confess, I would do the same thing Eduardo Hanke is suggesting. I would share the whole screen, not just one.
And now?
One window. Now, yes. Now we see perfectly what seems to be.
Thank you to Eduardo. I restart the video.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone. First of all, I apologize for my absence at the workshop, but at the same time, I have to be present at the Italian state exam in my role of teacher. The project I'm about to show you is called Movia. Its main goal is the creation of a virtual museum whose purpose is to bring back to the time of Naples kingdom aristocratic life, starting from a digital reconstruction of Acquaviva's palaces. We chose Acquaviva family because one of the most important aristocratic families in the kingdom. In recent years, virtual reality proved to be the best way to bring story and traditions back to life in museum, allowing spectators to enjoy a totally immersive experience and offering to the public historical heritage in a virtual way. We have two types of virtual museum experience. The first one, digital experience, allows you to get access to extra digital content that enrich traditional tours in the interior of the museum. The museum continues to be the physical context of the visitor tours. While in the second type, immersive experience, you can experience a 360-degree virtual tour of the museum, thanks to an accurate 3D reproduction of the building and the museum halls. The museum, as we know, stops to exist and it becomes a truly digital experience. But a simple digital reconstruction is not enough. I want to provide a more realistic and entertaining experience by using the controller and virtual reality set. The viewer can enjoy an immersive experience. We decided to introduce two different routes. The first one is a simple virtual tour, where we provide the visitors with virtual reality headset and controller. The second one is an interactive story which takes place in the very building and rooms where Acquaviva lived. As proved by previous experience, like the one in Locarno and the National Museum of Naples. A visual novel seems to be the best way to catch the attention of a big audience. For the faithful reconstruction of both the buildings and events to be included in the script of storytelling, we found out all the useful information from the historic documentation stored in various archives. Archivio di Stato di Napoli, in Naples, Archivio Generale in Simancas, and the private archive of Marchionne Castle. The big challenge of this project for me is the digital approach. As an historian, I found coding and modeling the hardest things to study and implement. And to say the truth, the pandemic didn't help. We chose AutoCAD and Unity, software for 3D modeling and animation, for the physical reconstruction of the buildings and the whole virtual context. Unity in particular is recognized as highly performing software, specialized in creating high-quality video games to create different scenes and make them interactive. In addition, we used an Oculus Rift S for the implementation of virtual headset, virtual reality. Okay, what you will see is a short trailer of the script we are working on based on events of the Apple. Okay. The chosen music, mostly the soundtrack, deserve particular attention. In particular, all the music is related to the period chosen for the project and recall the atmosphere of the Naples of 16th, 18th century. Okay. At present, we finished the digital reconstruction of two Acquaviva family palace, and we are working on the third one. This is Marchionne Castle in reality. This is Marchionne Castle in virtual reality in reconstruction. Okay. This is Atri Palace in reality, and this is reconstruction Atri Palace. Okay, this is an example of a room in classic mode visualization. You can select caption by pointer and get extra digital context. Now, let me show a short video of the work done so far. Okay. Maybe it's long. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, this is decoding. Okay. Okay. Thank you for the attention and good continuation.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for this first triple paper, which dealt with many topics. such as the digitalization of historical maps, the localization of lost monuments, GIS research engineering, virtual museums, and the digital portal where our PhD candidates' researches are collected. There will be time for questions and answers, at the end of the session. Now it is my pleasure to introduce the next speaker, who is Matteo Brera. Matteo Brera is a lecturer at the York University in Toronto, where he directed and completed the digitalization of the Angelo Principe collection of Italian-Canadian newspapers from 1929 to 1946. His numerous research interests include ecclesiastical and totalitarian policies of book censorship and transnational exchanges between Italy and America, with emphasis on Canada and the American South. The title of his paper is Unlocking the Potential of Digital Collections and Exhibitions, Italian Diasporas and Local Communities in North America. Professor Brera, the microphone is yours.
Thank you, Professor Siracusano, for the promotion on the field, because I'm not a professor, but you know, I take it as an augurio. Let me share my screen. I have a small PowerPoint presentation here. Let's see if I can open it. Okie dokie. Okay. So let me know if you can see anything.
Not yet.
Not yet, but
it might take a while. Okay. I think that it is working. Okay. It's okay.
Great. So, okay, I can do this. Of course, I'm not going to see you, so let me know if you see anything strange popping up. You should not, anyways. Well, thank you, Massimo, for Professor Giannini for inviting me, and again to Professor Siracusano for his introduction. After this day and a half of presentations, I felt a bit of a midget, to be honest, because my competencies in digital humanities are what they are. But thankfully, though, I had thought about talking about a couple of experiences of mine in the study of migrant communities in Italian migrant communities in North America, and the two different types of exhibitions. Instead of focusing mostly on digital humanities aspects, I thought I would insist a bit more on the effects on community relations and the interactions between the academic world and the communities that these exhibitions can have. As Professor Siracusano remembered during my presentation, I've been researching on Italian immigration to the United States and Canada, with a specific focus, as far as the US are concerned, on the American South, and Alabama, Tennessee, and Louisiana are my target states. In particular, have been looking at migrants' personal papers and a variety of other source documents, such as photographic documents or photographic archives. Within the personal papers, which are multi-layered types of collections, I found a wealth of ethnocultural periodicals, so that I kind of focus my attention onto those. But first, I wanted to talk about one smaller experiences of my experiences using Omica for the realization of an online exhibit on the Primo Bartolini papers. Papers belonged to an Italian-American patriot who lived between 1897 and 1959. It was the first to serve for Tennessee, non-American to serve for Tennessee in the war, and one of the first expression of this in the state of Italian Americanness. When dealing with this type of papers, the first thing to do is probably to choose the platform, and if you want to digitize this type of material. So my choice has been, apart from the very first experiments, which went through a series of really basic experiences, my choice fell on Omica because it's quite affordable. I'm sure most of you are familiar with Omica. It's a very affordable and intuitive platform that exploits the point-and-click technology, which is very basic technology, and is now very, very flexible also in terms of the devices on which it can be used. Omica has just introduced the Omica Everywhere for use on smartphones, tablets, and so on, which makes it very easy to use also for pedagogical purposes. And this allows for the collections to be used as, and to be digitized and to be used as either proper exhibits or databases. And of course, if you want to embed them into more complex environments, such as archival institutions, websites, or academic websites, then you need to use Islandora for more complex link-ups. But that's a different story. Today I'm just going to talk briefly about this collection. As I said, it's important to digitize these papers because personal papers especially are still limited in terms of discovery and access. These papers were the Bartolini papers, which consist of more than 300 poems, unpublished poems, which were in the attic of his late daughter in Nashville. And it was a bit of a old style research, tracing back the last of Bartolini's members of the family, and find what convinced her, first of all, that I wasn't a burglar trying to enter her house, and instead I was interested in his dad's papers, and then discovering them in the attic. But it was a very complex exhibit, collection, if you like, or finding at the beginning, because there are papers, common papers. There were artifacts. Bartolini was a self-taught sculptor, a bit of an artist, so there was a lot of material history there as well. Something that I've not really worked on in my exhibit, which focuses mostly on manuscript and typescripts and newspaper clippings. The online environment is a very simple one. As I said, it's a point and click, and the value of the exhibit, and of course an exhibit where it's possible to embed, like in this case, I'm sorry, this is a bit self-referential, but it's possible to embed in Omica, of course, a lot of several different tools, such as readers. This is a paper written on Bartolini, and also videos from YouTube. Again, it comes in handy when one wants to exploit Omica for the purpose of teaching. An interesting aspect of this collection, and a peculiar kind of experience of mine, was that Primo Bartolini, as I said, was also a sculptor. He was a builder too, and he built his house on the foundation of William Driver's former dwellings. William Driver, American Unionist patriot, who was the guy who gave the name Old Glory to the American flag. So Bartolini was particularly attached to it, and he built his house, which you see at the bottom here of the slide, on those dwellings. So an interesting aftermath of this exhibit was the creation of very strong ties with local institutions and local Italian American clubs, which will lead at some point to the creation of the Primo Bartolini historical marker, where the where the house once was. He has been there until 2015, when he was raised to the ground to make space for make room for multi-story buildings, as it usually happens these days, especially in booming cities like Nashville. But the first effect, tangible effect that links together somehow the digital humanities, so the exhibit and the public history, was the petition to the city council, to the Nashville City Council, to reinstate the William Driver historical marker that has been that was planted in 2009, if memory serves me, by Primo Bartolini / William Driver's home, and had been removed when the construction of the new neighborhood started. So I found it particularly interesting to observe how digital history, or the exploitation of digital tools to make known to the public a small and probably limited in scope and interest set of papers like the Bartolini papers could come in handy to to create the conditions for some tangible historical operation on in field operation like this kind. So with a marker planted there, and that's the first of my two experiences. I get to the most recent one, which was mentioned beforehand, namely the Angelo Principe newspaper collection. It's a database of 12 historical newspapers, Italian-Canadian newspapers. Now, you're probably accustomed with Chronicle in America, which is a larger database of newspapers, including the ethnocultural periodicals published in the United States between 1836 and 1922. And as I said, Chronicle in America also includes a bunch of Italian-American newspapers. Well, the Italian-Canadian market was completely had completely been forgotten until a few years ago. Obviously, we have to face the main challenge when thinking about newspapers. That is the material issues these artifacts have. Namely, they are published on extremely perishable, highly acidic paper. So and they are used in many ways in everyday life. So their expectancy of life is extremely limited. So it's difficult per se to find newspapers to digitize. We were lucky enough to have the collection of these 12 newspapers donated in 2014 by Angelo Principe, as a former lecturer at the University of Toronto, Mississauga, and York University. And that donation has been lying there for a while. It has been inventoried, but nobody has ever thought of digitizing it. And this is the final result, which is the digitized collection, is the actual first fully searchable database of Italian migrant periodicals in North America. And again, it has been, it started off as a community-driven and a community-related, and also community-funded, partially community-funded, but mostly community-funded venture. It was funded by the Zorzi Family Archival Fund and co-sponsored by the Faculty of Liberal Arts and Professional Studies at York University. I wanted you to have a look at the newspaper instead of preparing slides about it. So I'm going to open the website. Hopefully you can see that. Can you?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Great, fantastic. Okay, so this is the newspaper, the newspaper collection. As you see, it's very sleek. It's very easy. I wanted to privilege the searchability. The web interface, it's of course it's HTML enhanced with some interactivity for magnification and navigation, which is fairly common for this type of web collections. It's fully searchable, as I said. The text is fully OCR'd, so it's been modified, it's been prepared in optical character recognition. It can be modified in progress, so basically it's an ongoing project, and the text can be fixed here and there where I couldn't. There are so many mechanical problems with the collection here and there. Of course, the machine could not pick up the text correctly. So where the more you study the collection, the more you're bound to find some mistakes that can be corrected in an ongoing manner. Now, I wanted to show you two things. First of all, talking about the finding mistakes and all that, every issue is equipped with a comment tab, and obviously people can make suggestions as well in terms of corrupted textual portions, should they find any. There aren't too many, but there are a few still, of course. And also, I wanted to point you to the Share Your Story tab, because this is a feature that I wanted to include to facilitate the interaction with the community. Now, agreeing the terms of use, one can upload a file or write a story. So comment or say something about a specific newspaper, a specific collection, or even a specific person who wrote in the newspaper, and can also contribute to the collection. Now, this is a very long shot, but collections of this kind sometimes happen to be created by chance. Angelo Principe found these newspapers in an attic, as I did find my collection, my Bartolini papers in an attic. So this is a kind of common denominator. So people who might bump into the collection might want and might be able to somehow contribute, even physically, to the expansion of the collection, or with suggestions for further acquisition by the archives. As for the newspapers, this is the Bollettino Italo-Canadese. The papers are fascist and anti-fascist, of course, because of the specific time frame that we selected, and this is all that was available, as a matter of fact. This is how the search page, the main page, looks like. We have this is a rather comprehensive run, is almost complete for 1934. If we open up one issue, as 12th of January 1934, this is what you see. Okay, the main page, and then all the pages you have in the collection. So it's as you see, it's magnifiable, if I can use the word, so you can get to the text fairly well. You can browse through the whole collection. Of course, you can search. I could search for Mussolini, which you see I've already searched. Let's see if there's anything in this issue. And of course, there's a few parts of the text where Mussolini is mentioned. I searched for Mussolini because this is a fascist newspaper, so there's bound to be a lot of Mussolini in it for obvious reasons. And yeah, okay, so this is how it looks like. Obviously, you can download the whole PDF of the page. Again, with highlighted the searched items if you need them, and you can get more information through the More About This Publication tab, going back to the main page, where there's a rather comprehensive description of the paper, and where possible and where relevant, I have highlighted some of the notable people involved in the publication. In this case, Tommaso Mari was a fascist enthusiast and the director of the Bollettino Italo-Canadese, which was, as I said, the main fascist publication of Canada, and one of the most relevant in North America at the time. And of course, I've included some bibliography at the bottom to start as a starting hint for someone who might be interested in the matter. An interesting feature is also the map, because allows researchers and visitors to decide to locate where the newspaper was located in town. In this case, was in the heart of the Italian, the Little Italy. Toronto's Little Italy was along Elm Street. And this makes the collection also useful for some minimal urban history and mapping of what the Italian Canadian communities used to be in 1920, 1930, and the beginning of 1940s Canada. So I think I've shown you what I had to show you in terms of the website. So I'm going to get back to the presentation. Now, let's see. Can you see the presentation?
Yes, we can.
Good. Thank you. So I mentioned the crowdsourcing. I mentioned the importance of that Share Your Story tab as well for crowdsourcing. So that was one of my main aims, and it's always been my one of my main aims when it came to organizing these and realizing these collections, that of connection with the community and with institutions at large. And that's the reason why we chose, instead of an in-house process, which was also hyper-bureaucratized, and following up to what was being said this morning about the difficulties of collaborating internally between departments at various universities. The best possible way for us to proceed, for me to proceed, was to outsource the main digitization work to Our Digital World, which is a very interesting nonprofit organization that supports exactly this type of community-driven digitization of cultural heritage, in particular, with a particular eye on Canada, but not limited to. And their mission is exactly, I thought it was a perfect fit for their mission, as a matter of fact, because what Our Digital World tried to do is to create stories and create narratives that have shaped and still shape communities, especially these days, where, particularly in the Italian-Canadian context, there's a revival of the discourse on the internment, and there have been public apologies by the Prime Minister to the Italian-Canadian community. So it's important to kind of create and maintain narratives using history, and this type of collections, if the project is right, and if the partnership is of this kind, is possible to create a fruitful dialogue between different entities which have the same scope. I want to get to the conclusion of my talk, briefly talking about the main challenge that one finds when working on these collections, especially with newspapers. And that's a copyright problem. Even though we are talking about historical papers, there are problems with copyright, because, and it's always best practice to draw up a copyright report. this is the first page, the cover of the one I've prepared for the collection, which is available if someone wants to get bored to death on my academia profile, and can be downloaded. As I said, it's best practice because there are many different legislations. Now, I really don't want to bore you to death, but there are many different legislations when doing this type of that you need to take into account when doing this type of work. And but it's also, at least it was in my experience, very, very useful to study copyright with an eye to history, because every single person, every single layer that makes up the compilation, which is the newspaper, at least in the eyes of the law, can be studied in historical perspective. When you try to determine when a person lived and died, so that you can start the clock in terms of when the copyright will expire, you've done a bit of you know, a bit of history there. You've done a bit of biographical inquiry in that person, and that's how often new projects come to life. You know, maybe because you find a notable person, maybe because you find a particular event or a particular logo, maybe a particular advert that you know, strikes your mind. And this is what's also happening, as we will have a possible new project stemming from this on one newspaper, which is La Vittoria, and his editor-in-chief, Augusto Bersani, who was a facilitator and was also a controversial figure in interwar Canada, because it was probably the cause for many Italian Canadians who were the cause for the internment of many Italian Canadians. And this is a project that's been discussed with the University of Western Ontario in collaboration with King's College and the Multicultural Historical Society of Ontario. Now I really go to the conclusion, but talking about this project, this Bersani possible Bersani project, an important component will be the pedagogical one, because these databases and the personal papers alike, and even exhibits, can be used as an invaluable source for experiential learning. It's evident to anybody, especially in times of pandemic, how it's important for students, for instance, to have you know, a first-hand view of archival documents, which they could not get, especially now that they cannot visit documents, or in any case when archives are too far away to get to organize a day trip to that location. So these collections have this, in my opinion, created these fantastic opportunities for teaching, and also for small student-led research works, which are more and more common in courseworks, even at the undergraduate level. So these collections are particularly useful to that. And so to sum up, and I really have finished now, I'm summing up with the 4 reasons for a digital collection, which I've tried to illustrate in this talk, which I hope was not too heavy to follow, because we are at the end of the day. So it's the long-term approach to nurturing, to keep cultural heritage alive, and try to develop and facilitate community building between a variety of institutions, from academia to the general public, passing through archives and institutions such as the historical societies or local ethnic clubs. And also, that was the main purpose to start with, ensure that the historical materials can talk, and the stories they tell can be more easily discovered, certainly more than they would be in an attic. And obviously, from a digital humanities perspective, it's important these collections are important to help, you know, find new strategies to build innovative solutions to encourage users to engage with digitized content. And I was mentioning before the Omeka everywhere. Now, you know, we can have digital exhibits on the phone, and that helps, of course, us researchers and teachers as well, on the research and on the pedagogy front. And I think I'm done with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Matteo. Thank you for this brilliant paper based on your research on the Angelo Principe collection and on the phenomenon of Italian immigration in the US and in Canada. As I said before, there will be space for the discussion at the end of the session. Now, I am very glad to introduce Antonella Guidazzoli, who will be our last speaker for today. Antonella Guidazzoli is head of the research services at the Visit Lab Cileca. She has published extensively on different topics related to the many uses of computer graphics. Her computer graphics activities have, in fact, progressively covered different fields, spanning from forensic applications to virtual reality and 3D film making. She has been working at several national and international projects, such as the VMAST Transnational Network, the Isabella d'Este's Virtual Studiolo, Caserta Royal Palace, a Heritage Network, and many others. The title of her paper, fittingly enough, is Towards Digital Twins for Cultural Heritage Projects, the Visit Lab Experience. Thank you, Antonella, for having accepted our invitation. The microphone is yours.
Thank you. I try to my entire screen a window. Let me check. Okay, share. Can you, okay.
Yes, we can see properly the first slide of your presentation.
Okay, so everything seems to work. Perfect. So first of all, I would like to thank warmly Professor Giannini for letting us attend such really an interesting conference. And I hope that the video recording of the conference will be available, because unfortunately I have skipped some talks, but I feel I need to have a quick review about the conference. And really thank you again, Professor Giannini, for this opportunity and to share my experience in the field of virtual cultural heritage. Okay, I briefly introduce my institution, because I don't know if everybody knows Cineca. Cineca is a no-profit consortium made up of 67 universities, 9 research institutions, and the Italian Ministry of Education. And it was established in 1969, so we are quite old. And currently it's, let's say, the most powerful supercomputing center for scientific research. The idea of this consortium is really to share our computational resources with all the universities and all the institutions that need supercomputing power. So just to give you an idea, we ran simulation, numerical simulation in different scientific fields, ranging from physics, astrophysics, weather forecast, and climate sciences, and also computational engineering, bioinformatics. And currently we are involved in many European projects regarding drug design, because supercomputers are useful in order to find to try to find faster a set of molecules in order to fight COVID. So a supercomputing is really a sort of virtual laboratory that researchers can use. And in this kind of environment, but it's important to outline that in Cineca, since the end of the 80s, they started with application in the cultural heritage field. So we have applied our computational resources and human resources in the last 20 years, also in the field of cultural heritage. And I lead the Visit Lab. Visit Lab stands for Visual Information Technology Lab. And in this lab, we try to coordinate interdisciplinary projects, trying really to follow a sort of critical synergy between research and education. So we are trying, we are working, trying to link together two apparently disjointed graphic approaches, such as graphics frameworks designed to have scientific insights. You can think about scientific visualization, so use graphics to understand better scientific phenomena. And we try to find also a trade-off and connect, better say connect, this aspect of graphics with graphic tools useful in order to build application also to make people understand better the results of the complexity of research. So graphic is useful for understanding, but it's also useful for communicating complexity. So this, I could say, is the main aim of our laboratory, both, let's say, there is only one field for me, but let's say in the scientific and the humanistic field. So this is this slide, just a quick overview to give you an idea of the different projects in which we have been involved. But I would like to stress that for us, the openness of virtual heritage application is really a key issue. We try always to use open source software. So just to give you an example, for this 3D stereo movie created from scratch, Apa Letrusco, which Lucio Dalla voice, was made using Blender, and we can use our supercomputing facilities to run faster Blender. Blender is an open source software, and also for the, let's say, the 3D applications, we try to use Verge 3D, which is based on Blender. So we try to keep the pipeline open. We try really to keep the pipeline open. And what else? So for us, the openness is a very important key issue. Also, as you can see from this kind of slide, also the capacity to create projects with output onto different media. But of course, we have to take care that each media has its, let's say, features. So this is another important issue, a cross-media approach. We have to pay attention a lot to also to the visual interfaces, because in order to allow the complexity to be shown, you need good visual interfaces. Otherwise, it's impossible to explain the complexity. And moreover, another important, let's say, area now is this creation of digital ecosystems, the creation of frameworks, open frameworks with open data and the open innovation principles that I think are very interesting for the field of cultural heritage. And let's say that also artificial intelligence networks could be very useful in the cultural heritage field, we think, but we will see it a little bit later. And we are involved in many Horizon 2020, we were involved in many Horizon 2020 projects, and one of I can go. Okay, so I have skipped this slide just to outline that we have if you're interested, we have a summer school in October, and this is the 70th edition of this school, so quite a long time. It's an advanced school on computer graphics and cultural heritage. And this year, the theme of the school will be culture and common digital goods, workflow and applications in digital open ecosystems. So we are now trying to follow this path. And in this kind of school, we just explain how we create our project, the pipeline we use, and we also collaborate with Unibo, and we host PhD students and stages, and it's quite an interdisciplinary environment. So I just outlined to you, so if you want to have a look to this project, it's reachable. It's imediacity.io. This is the result of an European project in which 9 different movies archives from 9 different cities, Bologna, Barcelona, Stockholm, put in this platform all their photos and the materials. You can just go to the iMedia City site and see all the items that are available. But here, let's say the challenge was to let the researcher make their annotation according their studies, their interest. But we also add we put also the possibility to add artificial intelligence in order to create new metadata. For example, if you want to, you can say to the iMedia portal, I would like to see all the shots, the single shots in a movie in the year 40s, in which there is a bus or a tram. So you can do it only using this kind of help. This is just to give you an idea. The idea is to integrate, to let the researchers do their work, but also give the possibility to use this kind of help. Okay. I skip to the what I would like to share with you. The idea is to give you an idea while we are working on this concept of digital twin applied to cultural heritage project, just to share some thoughts about this concept applied to cultural heritage, and maybe to show you something about virtual Isabella d'Este Virtual Studiolo that we think is a useful, very useful use case in this context. So regarding digital twins is something that we have in Industry 4.0 in Italy. That's called Industry 4.0, and it's this concept is applied in the manufacturing context. So the idea is to have a digital copy for controlling and managing the single machine, the line of production, to have a representation of all the data available coming from sensors. And here I just skip the presentation. You can just click on this link if you are interested. I think we are going to share the presentation, I imagine, and have an idea of this kind of digital twin for industries. But coming to what we were wondering, what's a digital twin for, let's say, the general public? And I think that the first concept of digital twin was represented in the movie Jurassic Park. Do you remember the children navigating inside the 3D model of the park in order to fight the Tyrannosaurus Rex? So the idea was to act on a 3D model and see the effects in the real world. So this was just a sort of first concept, and you know, movies are very important also for IT people in order to imagine new stuff like a Minority Report. Do you remember? It's a key movie for the idea of interfaces. And we can say that for example, Baricco, the famous writer, is in his book, he said that this continuous interaction between these two words is now really the dominant force of reality. And so I think it's quite normal now to imagine and implement also in a museum or for a large culture or for a cultural digital sites or environment, we could really imagine control rooms starting from a 3D interface. really possible to replicate now the physical environment of a museum, to monitor the flows of visitors, to have the visualization of different sensors, so this idea of control room is for sure, we can apply it also in the context of the museums. But just to give you an idea of our path towards this concept, we started at the beginning of the millennium, connecting 3D models and databases. This was a very important project for us. We presented at SIGGRAPH 2004. This is the Bologna Virtual Museum of the Certosa of Bologna. We conceived it with Mauro Felicori, the former director of Reggia di Caserta, who was in these years, he was just a dirigente, assessor in the Assessorato alla Cultura di Bologna. And it was really an exciting time, because we realized that it was feasible to create a database and connect it to 3D model. And the idea was also to connect it to the real database of the dead people, but I think that maybe it was too early to propose a sort of digital twin of this historical digital twin of a cemetery. But still now, if you check in Storia e Memoria di Bologna, there are different scenarios, 3D scenarios, and they are connected to the different databases of the history of Bologna. So this was our first experience in this of this kind. A more recent project regarding this kind of application is with the Archives of Parma. EXAC, the project foresees the reconstruction of a real exhibit space located in the Abbey of Val Serena, with the aim of virtually recreating all the exhibitions that are being set up, thanks to the collection which are present in the archive. So the project, in the next release of the project, we will be able to give to the curator the opportunity to set up virtually the exhibition, bringing the different items from the digital archive. But I think that the Isabella Virtual Studiolo project is the one with has a lot of different levels of complexity, and maybe we can go directly to this. Can you see this story map?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. So this project, this is just a story map about the application. So this project started with a collaboration of the University of California, Irvine, the University of Chapel Hill, because the University of California, Irvine digitized with Archivio di Stato di Mantova, all the permissions you need, the 28 letters of Isabella d'Este. So there is a platform in which all these letters can be seen and shared. And also there are a lot of study in the field of music. And there is another database related to the music at the age of Isabella d'Este. So here the idea is to create a 3D model able to recreate in the different times, let's say, how the Virtual Studiolo was. And you can see we can have a time bar, we can do measurements. Okay, we have different kind of, so this is the current situation of the Studiolo. And because, as you know, the paintings are at Louvre, there are a lot of items scattered in all different museums of the world. So here, the idea of this application is not yet released. So I'm pleased maybe to share with you a questionnaire in order to improve the visual interface. The idea is really to create a 3D philological space, because everything is connected to a database with all the reference, the Zotero bibliography, and you can also, let's see, I change, okay, navigation. Okay, this is this. We have different kind of features, and we can explore this environment. Maybe I can try to go to, I let the story map go. So the idea of this application is to be philologically correct. And it can be used for didactic purposes, but we are working, and we have already released a sort of immersive VR experience, but it's something different. We use these items, but it's, let's say, it's like a immersive movie with a director, with it's let's say an artistic expression using this kind of items. But for the researchers, the main application is this one. It's because it's connected to the database. Let me check. So I think I can skip to the next slide. So here we can change the lighting. We can see each models. We can measure it, because the idea is that it was really a small space full of stuff. Now it's still empty because we need to connect more items. So coming back to the idea of the digital twin, we think that this perspective of digital twin applied to Isabella d'Este is interesting, because we can try to, as we can see in this diagram, we can expand the data sources on one axis, or we can expand the collection of simulation and knowledge on another axis. So on one hand, we can have more contexts, more artworks, more databases, more structured and unstructured data. On the other hand, we can gather more scholarly expertise, more simulation, covering different aspects. So we are just it's really at an early stage, but we think that this approach can help us in creating, in finding new tools and creating, having new insights in the complex world of Isabella. Another point, so it's already, okay, I can just give you, okay, I can skip, but there are, let's say, to widen and deepen the concept, we can think about contents that gradually accumulate along, as I said before, along the two different axes. So we have this kind of physical knowledge-based virtual studiolo on one axis, and the data-driven virtual studiolo. So the idea of the digital twin is on the upper right corner, but for sure it's an attainable goal. But we think it's really a good aim to give you an idea about domain expertise in order to reproduce, for example, the folding of the letter. We need different kind of expertise, but we need expertise in Blender, and we need to know the viscosity of the ink. So this kind of approach, simulation and bringing together different expertise is crucial in this kind of application. I think that it's really too late, so I can skip directly. These are to the conclusion.
Don't worry, it's not too late. You can
because
you can take time if you want.
Okay, so maybe I can share with you. I think it was too late, but okay, let me. I think it's better to skip to the conclusion and then maybe have open space for the discussion if you agree. So here we are. So trying to follow this diagram, I show you data-driven model and simulation. We think that we are really to move towards this cultural digital twin. We need new cooperation involving different scientific and technological communities. And we need novel deep learning networks and computer science technologies to be adapted to the complexity of the digital humanities. Because, we have to, for example, we have to train the artificial intelligence network with the right training set for the context. For example, in iMedia Cities, a surf table was found under the Nettuno because, the Nettuno has a 1 foot in front of another. So it seems he is surfing because the artificial intelligence network are trained with, let's say, contemporary data. So I think one domain in which we need to cooperate all together with different expertise is to create the correct training set for each different application. And let's say that the digital twin for us, it's really an environment for the development of this kind of collective intelligence, the concept that Pierre Levy anticipated in the 90s, describing the new anthropological space of cyberspace as a place for collective knowledge. So we think that the digital environment is now able not only to create interaction between different competencies of a knowledge which is delocalized, but also to collect, visualize, integrate artificial intelligence suggestions. And it's important that also to take into account also and to make transparent also the artificial intelligence path, because now it's also feasible to understand why the artificial intelligence has taken a path or and not one path. So I think this is a new scenario will be in front of us, and also it's very interesting that also to have multidisciplinary teams, as I said, but also artists, in order to really conceive new tools helpful for researchers, but also to communicate the complexity of research for a general audience. And I just end with the team, Cineca team. As you can see, there are really different kind of mathematics, engineer. I myself, I am an electronic engineer, but I took also a degree in history. And because even if sometimes we have small budget projects, but we need really different expertise in order to do a good work. So I end here my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Antonella Guidazzoli, for this fascinating presentation of the many activities of the Visit Lab Cineca, and especially on the digital twins. Actually, we are not that late, I think, but in any case, according to our program, now we can have a short break, but I kindly ask to Professor Giannini how short or how long will be our break.
10 minutes as usual.
10 minutes? Okay.
As usual, so we have...
According to the original program...
We can have our discussion, final discussion, and then the final remarks. Okay?
Okay.
Okay.
So we see you again in 10 minutes. Thank you. Thank you again to all the speakers. Thanks. So I think we are back and ready for the discussion. I'm waiting for my colleagues to come in. Okay, good afternoon again. So I think we are ready for the discussion. Probably we could proceed as follows. So you can reserve a place for your question on the chat. And a good idea could be to have, I think, possibly 5 questions and then to leave a space for the answers in order to have a more rational distribution of time among our speakers. So, are there any questions, especially, I think, from our PhD candidates? Okay, I see Echo Saputra here, for example. Any other questions? I prefer to collect 5 questions, I think, or 3 questions. Let's see. Okay, another question from Stefano Parola for Antonella Guidazzoli. Anybody else? As I said before, especially from our PhD candidates, don't be shy, be curious. Well, okay, 3 questions. Okay, from question from Eduardo Ángel Cruz. Maybe we can start with these 3 questions. So in order of reservation, Echo Saputra, would you like to do your to ask your question in person with your microphone? Or can I read what is written here in the chat? Echo Saputra wrote, I have a question for Matteo. I'm very interested about open source platform on digital heritages, and I want to know how to decide the right open source platform, or if there is any evaluation of consideration before implementing it. So this is the first question. The question from Stefano Parola for Antonella Guidazzoli. Stefano, would you like to?
Yes. Hello, everybody. I've got it's more like a curiosity for Antonella Guidazzoli. It's something technical, if you can answer. It's about, you were talking about Blender and your super calculator. What's the difference? There is a solid difference in that using a super calculator, maybe in interfaces, in developing, in the use of a program, because I didn't understand in concrete what was the difference. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot, Stefano. Eduardo Ángel Cruz has a question regarding platforms and formats.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. In the previous debate we had, I asked a little bit of this, but then I wanted to explore a little bit more about this question of adaptation, because I've heard several projects that are really interesting. But then I wanted to ask for how these projects, even if they're really innovative, they are ready to adapt for new platforms or for new formats that may arouse in the future. For example, in other occasions, we have listened, or I've seen other projects that try to address, for example, platforms such as YouTube and are being successful, but then are struggling to transition for new platforms such as a new format such as TikTok, which are really popular right now. And that also might apply, for example, for this kind of formats that the universities and professors and PhD programs have about congresses, but then there's some adaptations into more I don't know, like flexible things that in other universities are trying. I've heard they're trying, like, instead of doing more congresses or more this, they are doing like these podcast things that have that are always on Spotify and have a weekly professor or speaker that tries to do these formats. So this is of course is not like targeted to anyone, but since I'm interested in hearing your opinions regarding this subject, I would like to make this question to whoever might have any ideas regarding adaptation and new formats.
Thank you, Eduardo. Angel, thanks a lot. And just the last question, if possible. I see that Caterina Pardi has a question for Professor Brera. As you can see, everybody calls you a professor, not only me. So please, Caterina.
I'm currently working with Omica Classics, an exhibit builder for my research project. The project is about a fortress, Civitella del Tronto Fortress, and its military history, and in particular the most important sieges of the fortress. And I was asking, I want to ask for, and I want for each siege to create a short story, not only for an academic public, but also for a general public. And I'd like to ask you which additional plugin you advise to create this kind of work, short stories, and that's it. Thank you.
So a technical question. Thank you, Caterina. And possibly the last question, I think, from Tommaso Rebora. I leave the
do you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much for the interesting presentation. I have a question, maybe a reflection that came to my mind while listening to Professor Brera, but is not directly to anyone in particular. Maybe I'm wrong, but it seems to me that many of the examples shown yesterday and today were mainly focused on the reconstruction of physical places or infrastructures, or at least of the general geographical context. And I'm aware that this is particularly due to the availability of sources. But I wonder if there are possibilities to virtually reconstruct aspects related to subjective aspects and to people's lives, perhaps maybe through the reconstruction of a biography or of a specific social context, not necessarily linked to the life of a well-known person. And so, in short, I wonder if there are examples in which the passage from digital humanities to public history that Professor Brera talked before, if this passage takes place not only through the sharing of the means for research, but directly through a virtual reconstruction of the social and cultural history, instead only of the geographical and the context. I hope I was clear.
Thank you, Tommaso. So I think I can leave the space for the answers now. Sorry, Matteo, you're muted.
Sorry.
Okay.
Do you want Antonella? Do you want to go first? Perhaps. Do you want me to go first? Because yeah.
No,
okay. Right. Now, in order. Let's see if I remember everything clearly enough. The choice. The choice of a platform. Well, this is a tricky question to answer, because I would say it really depends on the kind of material you have to deal with here. With newspapers, obviously, a certain type of platform is indicated if you really want to exploit the potential of newspapers. I want to give you an example. If you put the newspapers on Omica, on a kind of a flat type of app or a platform for exhibits, you miss out on, for instance, the searchability tools. And when it comes to textual documents, such as newspapers, you need that type of tool, in my opinion. You need to make the newspaper talk. I mean, the main thing when you look at when you try to find out what platform, what device is better to use, is really has to be commensurate with the kind of aim you're going to. What's your target, basically, right? If you want to make a document talk properly, you need to, first of all, think of what document you have. So with newspapers, for instance, it's, in my opinion, fundamental to have some kind of dynamic approach, like searchability, like, newspapers have to be magnified. There must be some kind of interaction. If you want that type of interaction community-wide, as I did, then you have to think of a platform that allows you to do that. And of course, a platform such as the Vita toolkit offered by Our Digital World was better, in my opinion, than what York University Archives could do. So that was a choice informed by not only the necessity, but by the aim of the project itself, which was, as I said, community-driven and community targeted. So it has to be that kind of approach. As per exhibitions, of course, you have much more. You are at liberty really to choose whatever you like. For an older exhibit on the Italians of Alabama, of Birmingham, Alabama, I even used SlideShare. Which was a very basic tool, but it was easy. We were constrained in terms of time. We didn't have. We were constrained in terms of copyright, because we had an archives in Alabama who that borrowed us, from which we borrowed some material, and they only gave us 30 days, a 30 days copyright time frame, after which we should have taken down everything. So it was pointless to create anything through Omica or whatever. So we decided to do the SlideShare thing, which was also which could have been transformed into a PDF to be downloaded, and that way we could get around that specific requirement. But everything has its own time and its own space, I think. So that when you choose, you need to choose according to what you have on your hands, looking at the materials, looking at the context. In that case, the Alabama case, it was something stemming from a physical exhibit. So we had that material, we just put it, as a slide, as a slideshow basically online that could have been embedded within a very, very tricky website. That's another requirement you might have. It was Utrecht University. They have specific technical requirements. We could not embed, more complex things. So we had to go for something very simple, which worked for the other constraints we had. So I would say it's always tricky the best advice I can give here is, evaluate what you want to do with your materials and what kind of materials you have. So there's no answer to that question. as per the plugin, I'll have to think about it, because there's a, and I'd have to see the, the exhibit, because now I can get to get a better sense of what you'd like to do, because no, without seeing it, it's really difficult to say. And also, plugins are always evolving, so there might be something new that I haven't checked out yet. So did you have any idea in particular? Have you tried using any plugin, Caterina? Microphone.
You're muted.
It's my first experience with Omeka Classics, and I saw that it's possible to build exhibits, but I want only know if there is something to create short stories, because I want to underline the narrative aspect of my research.
Right.
For a public, not only an academic public, but also a general public.
Well, there's a I think I can't recall exactly the name of that plugin. I think it's a blog shortcode, something like that, which allows you to create an exhibition in a form of a blog, which could be useful, especially if you're looking to interact with the public. If you're looking to get some kind of feedback, I don't know exactly if that's what you want to do, but there are a few. I think there's a few of these plugins. I mean, this one, if memory serves me, was called shortcode or something like that, blog shortcode, something like that. This could be an idea. I mean, as I said, Omeka is quite intuitive, so sometimes it's also a matter to play around with the right plugin, with different plugins until the right one comes across. So but this one is the first one that pops in my mind. Having not seen anything, and just getting a broad sense of what you're trying to do from what you said. So
can I write you?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. If I see the exhibit, maybe while you're working on it, maybe we can have a chat and see what's best.
Okay, thanks a lot.
No problem. Do I have anything else to answer to? Probably Tommaso had something for me.
Yes, he had.
Right.
Unfortunately, I must confess I don't remember.
No, it was something about social history, culture and social history, and the reconstruction of it. In the eyes of the public, I mean, yes. From digital humanities to the public, that's the thing. Yes, I think that's I focused mostly with the Bartolini exhibit. I focused mostly on the biography of the guy in this case, but not only, because it became clear that there was more to it, and obviously if you end up planting an historical marker, clearly there's not only Bartolini, but there's also the Italians around him, and he was, of course, a leading member of the group, the small group of Italians that lived in Nashville at a certain period of time. That said, I have another ongoing project which might better answer your question. I'm now working on on the newspapers published in New Orleans, in La Voce Coloniale, which was a rather important newspaper for the Italians of the time, especially after the lynchings of Italians, the famous lynchings after the killing of Chief Hennessy, and I'm looking to create a more complex picture, cultural and social history of of New Orleans Italians before and after the lynching through what's written in the newspapers, in the Voce Coloniale, to see how Italians saw the problem of their whiteness / blackness in particular, which is always studied from an outside perspective, right? People say, scholars have said, Italians were perceived as black, as white, through this governmental sources by this dominant group, the American whites, but no one has actually studied the other way around, to see how the Italians perceive themselves, and that's what, I don't know when, I would like to do, but it's an ongoing project of mine, studying, the whiteness, blackness case, with an Italian focus, of course, from an Italian perspective through the newspapers, and that could lead exactly there. The output could be exactly that one. Consider that in New Orleans there isn't an historical marker, for instance, that remembers the lynchings. And that could be a natural output at some point, because that killing, that lynching was racially was rooted in racial biases, and that could be one aspect to study. But so the answer to your question is certainly yes. I mean, the scope for working on cultural history to bridge somehow, to use cultural history to bridge, to construct a bridge between the digital humanities and public history and the public in general.
Thank you, Matteo. And Antonella,
yes, I can answer to the supercomputing and Blender. So the idea is that with a supercomputer, you can have at your disposal many CPUs. So we can run in parallel Blender and get faster the results. If you have to create, for example, video installation, video mapping, or just 3D and 3D 4K animation, you need a lot of time with a normal workstation, let's say. So the idea is to let also the researcher using open software, but empowered by supercomputing resources. And also if you think to, for example, laser scanning, huge data in order to transform a point cloud in a mesh for create an animation, you can run MeshLab on a supercomputing machine, and it's
yeah. So basically, you are in
the idea for us is to also try to empower the digital humanities, which HPC resources, and try to tailor them to their needs. As I said before, also to train artificial intelligence. You don't need supercomputers to run artificial intelligence, but you need supercomputer in order to train them. And in digital humanities, there are so many different possibilities of different artificial intelligence networks, and you need to create a different training set, I think. And so I think it's just a good opportunity for the researchers to, and everybody can apply and use our, I mean, everybody, researchers can apply and use for free our resources.
Okay, thank you.
That's the idea.
If I'm allowed, I only have a very short, very quick remark to make, to what's been said by Antonella, and because I think, and it's about the infinite possibilities that she mentions, and I think she's absolutely spot on, and I think it's what we have been doing over the last, and we've been discovering in most cases over the last few hours and the last day or so. There's so much to do, and and so many possibilities, really. And it seems otherwise that many academics are still kind of stuck, right, in the past, while there's a whole world out there to explore and to create things with, in a way. So this is just something I had to say, out of my chest, but yeah.
Thank you both, Antonella and Matteo, for your generous and crystal clear answers. If you don't have any other questions, I think that now we can switch to the final conclusions, final considerations on the 2 days conference. I ask if anybody has another question. I think you're satisfied. So I ask Professor Giannini if he does agree to switch to the final considerations.
Yes, if someone has any question, the PhD candidates, for instance, Samuele Fabbri, where are you? Show yourself.
No, I was satisfied.
I know you are satisfied. Well, we will see next week.
Yes.
And so nothing. We can switch to the final remarks by Vittoria Fiorelli and Raffaella Morselli, I think. But you are the chair, Luca. So.
Oh, okay, I am the chair. So sorry. So thanks again to Antonella Guidazzoli and Matteo Brera. Now I'm happy, I'm glad to leave the word to Professor Vittoria Fiorelli from the Università Suor Orsola Benincasa of Naples, and to Professor Raffaella Morselli from the University of Teramo for their closing remarks on these 2 days of our online conference. Thank you.
Raffaella, are you going or am I going?
As you like it. If you prefer in alphabetical order.
In alphabetical order.
Okay.
Okay. Technological and alphabetical order. Now, I will be very quick in my remarks, only because I think that Professor Matteo Brera already made the best final remark. So there's no final remark. And I would say that all I prepared before as a final remark, before hearing this 2 days conference and projects, is I threw everything away, and it wasn't what I needed to say now, because I learned so much in these 2 days. And as I had imagined to say something about the theoretical approach we need to talk about the connection between digital humanities or digital history and cultural heritage. Now, I've heard so many things, project, and I saw so many practical things that I think it's not I think it's necessary, but I don't think it's the moment now to do so. But I only want to remark one thing. The theoretical reflection about of scholars have 3 elements: memory, digital, and images. And these three elements are the three things we all have been talking about in these 2 days. So history, digital and cultural heritage, I think are very strictly connected with this idea, and with the idea of the interaction between human and technology, which is one of the question for philosophy since a long time. But as I said, I don't want to talk about that now, and I prefer to tell a couple of things I talked about these 2 days. One is the conceptual point that we talked about, which is the connection, I think. And the second one is the language, which is a part of connecting science and dissemination we talked about today. And this morning, Felix put for us another question, I think, which is quality. And this is a very difficult question to approach because, as he told us this morning, there is a wide and cheap web where so many things are for the public. So we have to find a way to stay in this field and control what this tendency of participating. We heard a lot about participation from Matteo Brera today, but the participation is very complicated because we have to look at participation, and I think it was one of this last question, how do you choose things that are proposed from the community? And the question is not so simple, because the storytelling, the public history are beginning to be a free field where quality is sometimes not so present, I would say. The second question, which is connected with this one, is the question about dissemination. Dissemination and catching different publics. Everybody said in these 2 days that we are trying to talk with new publics. About this, I always thought that there's a question. I said it's a question of language, but I've always been sure that many disciplines, if many disciplines dialogue together, we can go through the disciplinary languages and match a better way to communicate. What I mean is that avoiding the simplification, we can make scholar able to gain a greater degree of integration within quality, each one with his language. The cross language, I think, is something we must work on, because it's the first thing. I don't mean a language to tell, I mean a language to think and to project research also. And then there's a question of sustainability, because we have to interact with companies and markets. We've heard this too this morning. A connection that isn't a simply dissemination tool, but that directs opinions and choices of scholars. And by this way, it directs even the research itself. So it's very dangerous, I think, to only think about public and catching new publics. We have seen so many projects working with images. The images are the first thing everybody has used in this project. And we've seen that they are useful for many applications, not only narrative application, but also for tourism, for the education, for promotion, for restoration and reconstruction. We have many beautiful things in Ercolano and Pompeii about the virtual reconstruction of something there isn't no more. But there's also another frontier I heard about in the last period, which is the narrative podcast. And this narrative podcast are not only an accomplishment of the virtual tools, the virtual tools needs podcast, but they are now often together with this immersive narrative, which is not only a virtual tour, but it's made about sound, music, even smells. And this kind of immersive tours are necessary for a public I didn't hear anything about in these 2 days. And I think it's a very important public, which is the people with disabilities. Because people with disabilities are a huge public, and they need another way of telling cultural heritage. Some years ago in my university, we had a lot of money from the Team Foundation for an exhibition for blind people. It was called Arte in Luce. And it was made about a tour, a virtual tour, for which we used sound, smell, light, but also the archive and the place we're in, which is part of the cultural heritage, because it's an historical place. And finally, I want to close with my remarks with going back to the way digital revolution had an impact of how story is being studied, analyzed, shared, and even thought, as well as how the sources of the past are published and preserved now. A perspective we heard about in these 2 days with many suggestions. We all know that the main objective of most of the projects that are in this field and on which we have been worked in recent times are part of a general tendency to reinforce the relationship between user and resources, or between publics, all these publics we talked about, and cultural assets. A system in which technologies have been used as a facilitator of intellectual dissemination. I think it's the time to go beyond this. Maybe, I don't know, but now that I heard Antonella Guidazzoli, maybe I'm too old for that, because they're already over. But I think we need the perspective that in a language of education they call flipped classroom, looking from the other perspective. I mean that we don't have to ask engineers to help us for our historical or cultural projects, but we have to begin the project together. We have to share a culture, and not each one has his competence, but we have to project from the beginning together, because we have to, maybe we that are working in the university, maybe we have to teach other things in another way. We have to begin from our way of teaching our disciplines, because otherwise this kind of new word will be always two words that stay together, but it's not only one word where we all can work. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Fiorelli. I would leave the word to Professor Marselli. Thank you, Raffaella.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Vittoria. You fire me with all your remarks. So I restart with a point.
So sorry, but it's very difficult for us, for the two of us, I think.
It's a joke. It was very, very interesting 2 long days that could ask to approach all different types of database and projects and relationship between data and the visuals, culture. And so I restart from the first title of these 2 days. When digital history meets cultural heritage. I would like to translate in a question. When digital history meets cultural heritage? That is exactly what we have done during these 2 days. We're starting to answer to this question. And the question is, what happens when digital history meets cultural heritage? We have a very different levels of project. We attend to a lot of projects on database, archival research, incredible. The one of Matteo Alcalacche and Elena Fumagalli was an incredible new project about the Campari project and the name Ludovico project. That is very similar to the one of Matteo Brera, because both of them are from libraries or archival documents. And we had 2 projects, very interesting, but very starting from a very long period, that are the ones of the Medici Archive project with the Asianitis and the one with Peter Lukart and the CASPA project. They are very important for the other project on the archives and the documents for the problem they resolved during the years. But we have other meeting today. We have other presentation about more larger communities of people that look at or research on other databases that are more narrative database about project and research. That one of Nico Bortoletto, for example, I'm sorry that she is gone, or the one of Felix Labrador, the Cinter project is very, very interesting for us, because a video, virtual, real sites, and documents and reconstruction, virtual reconstruction. And then we have the experience on the museum, the one on the Donatello project of Babic from Pushkin Museum. It's for me, it's very, very interesting. It's another, completely another point of view. It's not a reconstruction like the Isabella project for the Camerino in Palazzo Ducale in Mantova, but tending to reconstruct the production and in certain cases, an attribution about the materials and the object by Donatello, for example. Then we have the experience of the Davide Pontile. So Davide is an incredible experience. I try the Speculus with for the Arapaces. It was an incredible narrative project. So what we have to think about is that when digital history meets cultural heritage, our fantasy is very, very wide, very large. We can try to put together a lot of things, different things. So the other point is, who is the public, the target and the public? So it's a self-utilization for research, for ourselves, from academic purposes, or other utilization is to encourage other people to approach themselves to archival materials and history. And that's the project, the Medici Archive project, tend to do that. Cutting problem on gender studies, maybe other approach over a very huge database on a lot of documents. So we have to think about a more large community than the one of the utilization of the researcher group. That's the real problem. But for me, one of the object, the goal that we have to could create together is a sort of international council of digital humanities. I think that now, in these months and this year, could be the moment to think about an international council of digital humanities. We don't know exactly how many digital projects are in the world. We know each other because we met in our studies, maybe in our other summit or workshop, or we are friends in some cases. But we don't know exactly how many digital humanities projects are in Europe, in United States, but in China, in Asia, in India. So in my opinion, it's time to thinking about a sort of new international council of digital humanities, like the ICOM, for example, International Council of Museum. And for us, it's important to have a sort of ethical and research political group that think about not the law, but the rules about the digital humanities. You know, we know that one of the problem of the digital humanity, especially in the last 3 decades, are the conservation of the oldest databases. We have databases very, very old that we can't check what we could do with those databases. This is one of the problems. For example, there is a wonderful database that I usually use. It's a Gina Fasoli in Bologna with the maps of Bologna. It was a database very old and one of the first database on the subject that now is not really out of order, but it's not we have no new documentation inside. So that's a real problem.
No, I know.
Yeah, I know. I don't know, Antonella, if you agree, but
I totally agree, because Professoressa Bocchi was really a pioneer
yeah,
in this kind of study. But we have the problem of digital preservation of digital stuff now. And I think this is something we have to discuss all together. I mean, from different perspectives, to give also persistence to in the future to all these digital items, different applications. It's
different application, very different database. All database that now we can't read without an assistance of an informatic person that is very able to use that. So this is one of the problems that we could summarize all together, and we have to think about. Because older database means databases are sleeping with no more implementation. That's the problem. And then we have a problem of conservation of older databases. What we can do with a program that never run in our new computer. So I think that this 2 days was very, very important for us, all of us, from different point of view and different approach: the cultural heritage, the archive research, the digital humanities, and the new visor to recreate a virtual experience. But all these are arrive from the same root. The same root is the digitalization. That's the root which we start together. So I will finish with this this argumentation. But I'm really thank you for Massimo to put together all these people that work in a different way, but in the same way in the meantime. So we have to, I hope that we will able to meet together more and more during this year and the next year to think about a new International Council of Digital Humanities that collect almost a list of all digital projects in Europe, in the United States, in and other part of the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Marselli. And now I think I can leave the word to Professor Giannini as the organizer of the conference.
Well, thank you a lot to all colleagues who participated, who accepted to participate in this workshop. And last but not least, of course, to Vittoria and Raffaella for their closing remarks. I must confess that I learned a lot from all of you and your so rich projects. This is always a key point for me. I can only say that I agree with Professor Fiorelli that we need new thinking also on a theoretical level on these issues that are so important today: the different types of audience, the multiple languages of research and the communication, the digital tools, the relationship between training in research and innovation, scientific knowledge, dissemination and growth of new economic activities. Furthermore, I totally agree with Raffaella about her idea of an international council of working teams on digital humanities. And I believe that in the near future, we should also reflect on the relationship between open access, commercial use, and copyright. In my opinion, these are very complex issues that still need to be resolved in a changing technological landscape. So thank a lot to all, and keep in touch for the next conference. I hope to organize in May or June of 2022, this time in presence in Teramo, because now is the time to build a network of experienced teams. And so really thank you to all for your kind participation and your contribution to the, I don't know if the success or not, but surely of a very interesting workshop. Thank you.
Thank you to all. Hello. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Massimo,
So,
thank you all.
So now you are free from my terrible hands. And,
ciao a tutti, grazie.
Thank you to Matteo, to Peter, to Luca, Antonella, of course, Matteo Brera, Alessio, Elena Fumagalli, Raffaella Morselli, and all the colleagues. Really, it was a very, very fascinating experience for me, and amazing also. So,
grazie a te.
We will meet soon.
Arrivederci.
You will be my victims, don't worry. Ciao.
Arrivederci a tutti, un bacio ai miei amici americani.
Ciao Antonella, grazie Matteo, thank you Fulvia, Peter, for your patience.
Ma speriamo bene la prossima volta in real time. Okay.
In real time, of course.
Real life, not virtual.
This is my commitment to the map and his head that is now destroyed. Grazie Alessio, grazie a Rita, Bernardo Garcia, Carlos Sosa, Miguel Navarro, and Luca Siracusano, who chaired so good our last session. And see you as soon as possible. Ciao.
Grazie a tutti.
Ciao.
Arrivederci.
Ciao.
Grazie.